Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us. Thanks for being part of our community. My name is Valen Kolika, and I'll be your host for today. A few reminders before we kick off. If you have issues viewing the stream at any time during this presentation and are using the web browser version of Teams, please refresh your browser. If you are using the desktop app of Teams, please exit and rejoin. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared publicly. We will post the recordings on our community at aka.ms/security-webinars. Now, we do provide closed captions and in several languages, that is, which you can enable them by clicking on the CC button located at the lower right corner of your screen. Please feel free to ask questions at any time by typing them in the live event Q&A. Simply by clicking on the Ask a Question button. Be aware that any questions you post will be publicly visible. However, if you prefer, you can also post your question anonymously by checking the box right below where you enter it. We often get many questions on these webinars, and we will do our best to respond to all of them in real time. In the event if the answer was not provided, or if you think of any additional questions post this event, please don't hesitate to raise them on our Azure Sentinel forum at aka.ms/Azure Sentinel community. We'd love to hear your feedback on how we can improve on these webinars, and you can do so at aka.ms/security-webinar-feedback. And by the way, all these links that I'm announcing have been already shared with you on the chat or the live event Q&A window. I would like to invite you to join our public community by visiting at aka.ms/security-community. Now, that's the best way to ensure that you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements. On our community, you can speak directly to our engineering teams that create our security products. You'll be able to influence our product designs and get early access to changes by doing things like participating in private previews, and which you can sign up for at aka.ms/prsec.com. In there, you can request features, you can give feedback, review our product roadmaps, register for events, or join webinars like this. We believe that the best way to improve our products is simply by removing any barriers between you and the people that create them. So we hope you'll join us. In today's session, Sarah Young and Jeremy Ten will take us over to see what's been new in Azure Sentinel over the publicly available features that has been released in the last 6 months or so. Both Sarah and Jeremy are program managers with our Azure Sentinel GTP team. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to them. Sarah, Jeremy, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Alan. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Depending on where you are in the world. For both Jeremy and I, it's the early hours of the morning of the 16th of September because I'm in New Zealand and Jeremy is in Australia. We've got a pretty busy session. I will, as Valen has introduced us, I'm just going to crack on. I'll be taking the first half of this webinar, and then Jeremy will be doing the second half, just so we don't have to keep bouncing screen shares between each other. But as Valen said, we're both in the cloud security team, and both of us are very awake for the early hours of the morning. So we'll get into it because Sentinel, as you probably know, Sentinel has an incredible rate of change, and it's really, really hard to keep up with what's going on. Even though we have lots of resources, it can take a long time to can take a really long. It still takes you know, a lot of concentration and time. So we just wanted to run you through everything that's been, all the things that are notable that have become publicly available in the last 6 months or so. So to start with, let's talk about data connectors. So to start with, we've got a ton of new first-party data connectors. So we've got Dynamics 365, we have Azure SQL database. You can now deploy Microsoft connectors using Azure Policy. If you're using Azure Policy in your deployment, we've got a Key Vault connector. We have Azure Kubernetes Service or AKS connector, and we've also changed the Windows Security Events connector and Azure Activity. Now, what that means is they don't just automatically change, because we wouldn't do that in production, but you can upgrade to the newer versions. So if they're connectors that you're using, go and have a look, because it could be, it's probably worth you thinking or starting to plan to do an upgrade there. Third-party data connectors. This is everything that's been released sort of in the past 6 months or so. As you can see, I'm not going to read them all out, but I'll just stay on this slide for some time, just so you can read them. But, you know, as we're always doing in Sentinel, we're trying to add as many third-party data connectors as we can, ones that are useful and ones that will actually be commonly used third-party products, because of course we recognize that, you know, you can't just have connectors for Microsoft products. So we've been adding lots of commonly used third-party products. Of course, with all of these, we'll be adding more in the future, but this is a quick summary of what we've released, and there are a lot more to come. So I'm going to talk about some other features. I call them notable features, because I always start with data connectors, because data connectors are something that, rightly so, a lot of our customers are really, really interested in, because of course you can't do anything unless you've got unless you actually have a data coming in. But there's some other things that it's worth knowing about too. So a really, really important one is normalization. So you may already realize, if you're using Sentinel, that we don't have, or we didn't have until recently, a normalization schema. Now we're introducing the Azure Sentinel Information Model, or ASIM, and that allows you to normalize whatever content comes in. Now, I can't talk about this just because of time and loads of detail, but there are upcoming webinars on normalization done by Ofer Shazaf, who, if you listen to any Azure Sentinel webinars, you'll know Ofer is the king of webinars. He's the Azure Sentinel Information Model is his baby, and how we do it is, at the moment, we'll be doing it with query time parsing, and as we go through and implement this model, we'll change things up as well, and we'll have other options. As I said, far too big a topic to go into to go into lots here, but we've got upcoming webinars on it. I believe Ofer is doing one in about 2 weeks' time. There's already some previously posted, so definitely go and have a read up on that, because it's going to be a really important thing going forward, of course, to have everything normalized, so Sentinel understands what your data is, no matter where it comes from. Another one that's pretty important, or can be important, is your import and export for analytics rules. Now, I know certainly when I've been speaking to customers and working with our customers, quite a few folks have asked me how they can import and export in a nice way. It can be it used to be quite tricky to do an import and export of the rules. So particularly if you had your own custom analytics rules and you needed to take them elsewhere, it wasn't the easiest thing in the world to do. But now you can export them in a JSON format, a JSON ARM template, which means you can pull them out and you can redeploy them to another workspace if that's what you need to do, and it can all be done through code because it's coming out as a template, which is really, really nice. And that that template does include all the information that a analytics rule will have. So not just the logic, it will bring in, you know, what MITRE attack tactics you've assigned to it, what its severity is, etc. So that's also could be a good one depending on your scenarios. We've also done some improvements to workbooks. I have to say, this is probably one of the things I was asked for the most frequently, I think, which was being able to print workbooks, because if you're unfamiliar, workbooks are our way of doing dashboards, for want of a better phrase. And of course, you know, people need to share dashboards and summaries and visualizations. We've now got a print content button. You can see there it's next to the name of a workbook with the 3 dots, and that means you can print a PDF, or if you really want to, you can print a hard copy. And so if you need to send a report or a visualization that a workbook is showing, you can now actually create a nice PDF rather than having to screenshot it, which is certainly something some customers wanted for reporting requirements. The other thing in workbooks, moving to my screenshot on the right hand side, is we can now do auto refresh. So what that means is every 30 seconds, the queries, but if you turn that on, the queries behind the workbook will refresh about every 30 seconds. So if you have a query or a visualization that might change frequently, for example, maybe your SOC reporting metrics, then you can now have an auto refresh, especially if you've got a nice little dashboard in your TV screens. Early on in my career, I worked in a help desk, and we used to have a lot of visualization boards. We used to have a lot of TVs with visualizations on our screen. So I know that's something that's going to be a welcome improvement for a good number of our customers. The hunting dashboard, that's had a refresh if you haven't looked at it recently. I think the most important thing to mention about the hunting dashboard is the column that says results delta there with the queries. What that means is the dashboard will now show you the delta between when you last ran the query and when you're currently running it. So rather than just giving you the results, which is the column to the left of the hunting dashboard, it will now also actually tell you the delta. And I realize I've picked a bad screenshot because I haven't actually got any deltas in there. But of course, for hunting, we are looking for running queries frequently, but having that sort of change, that change in results, because if the results go up from what you're normally expecting, that could be an indication that something's changed from your baseline and that it's worth investigating more. So yeah, I think that's a really good addition to the hunting dashboard. And then I think one more before we go into the demo. I promise this isn't just all slides. Unfortunately, there's just too many things to demo. Is fusion detection for ransomware. So this is in public preview, and so now we have a fusion detection that looks for low priority or low severity alerts that are coming in from different products, but which by themselves in isolation might look fairly benign, but if Fusion sees enough of them or sees patterns that we've seen in Microsoft can actually be associated with ransomware, it will actually trigger events. So I'll just show you here a screenshot of that. So you can see if we have a look at this incident that's triggered, you can see that on the timeline, actually, there's quite a number of low severity alerts, and they've come in from a lot of different products there. Defender for endpoint, and they also would bring in Defender for identity, and you can see that, you know, in isolation, these might not be anything, but just based on Microsoft's threat intelligence and what we've seen before, we do see that this could actually be ransomware. So again, we're just using our machine learning smarts to actually help you out there, because that is something that could be missed potentially. So yeah, and with that, I'm going to actually show you a bit of a demo, because of course that's what's really exciting. And so I'm just going to come out of that. And first of all, I'm going to talk about the solutions gallery, and I've just realized how quite frustratingly that my computer rebooted and it hasn't signed me back into everything. I just realized I won't share my personal email with you all, so apologies whilst I just quickly log in. Obviously that I would have a reboot I would have a reboot overnight just when I needed to log in, but I shall be back in a second. So what I'm going to show you here is I'm going to show you our solutions gallery. Now, our solutions gallery, you may have noticed, is down here at the bottom. You can see solutions, and this is a really important one that people really do need to pay attention to, because going forward, rather than you might be used to just going to the connectors gallery and just adding things in there and looking for the new connectors, but going forward, we're looking at adding solutions, and so a solution, I'm going to pick CrowdStrike here. A solution isn't just a connector, it's usually a collection of Sentinel collateral around a particular product. So you can see here in this CrowdStrike, we've got the couple of data connectors, a couple of parsers, we've got workbooks, analytics rules, and playbooks. So when you deploy a solution, it deploys all of those different things. And now I'm actually going to show you. We're going to deploy CrowdStrike into here. So it is all templatized. So when you click on things, this will look familiar to you. So I'm going to pick my Sentinel resource group, and then I'm going to pick my Sentinel workspace to deploy this to. It's going to tell me a bit about the data connectors. It's also, I can change the name of the workbook before I deploy it. It's just talking about the analytics. You can't change those until they've been deployed. And here in the playbook, I do need to add all my different CrowdStrike information. Now, for the purposes of this, I'm not going to add any of this. It will actually deploy. But of course, if you were doing this in reality, in real life, you would need to change here, add in your secret into Key Vault from CrowdStrike, etc. And then, like we do with everything Azure, we'll do a validation of the deployment before we can create it. So you can see here, we've got everything has validated. So I'm going to click create, and this solution is going to deploy into my tenant. So you can see here, it is deploying. And so this is the same as any kind of templated operations in Sentinel. You can see the deployment is running, and it's actually finished and succeeded. You see, I picked this one because it's it's quite quick. So you can see here we've got we've deployed workbooks, we've deployed things into the Sentinel workspace. So all of those things have just deployed. So now if I go back and we have a look at my workspace, if I go into the connector, we can see, right, you can see now we've got both the CrowdStrike data connectors here. And if I have a look in my automation and we have a look at playbooks, you can see I've got CrowdStrike playbooks here as well at the bottom. And the same goes for my workbooks. Oh no, we don't want to put workbook, we want to put CrowdStrike. Now you can see I've actually deployed this many times, so I've got multiple, but you get the idea. And then finally, we have CrowdStrike analytics rules as well. So you can see here, we've got an analytics rule that will create a high severity incident when something comes out of CrowdStrike that's critical severity. So definitely going forward, it's really, really important that you don't just keep an eye on data connectors, the data connectors gallery. You need to check solutions, because going forward, you won't necessarily see a connector until you've deployed the solution. So if you haven't had a look at that, go and have a look, because we're always adding new ones. One that is of note that I'll talk about quickly in here is our SAP module. Now, of course, if you're not, this is only going to be of note if you're using SAP, but if you are using SAP, you may know that SAP logs are traditionally very, very difficult to get into a SIEM, not just Sentinel, any kind of SIEM, because it doesn't provide a consistent log format, and it gets pulled from different places. And of course, a SIEM expects that it gets a consistent or a reasonably consistent log format from wherever it pulls from. So it's been traditionally pretty hard to put SAP into any kind of SIEM. We've actually developed for want of a better phrase, a go-between. It's a container that will pull logs from SAP, format them in a nice way, and it will then send them into Sentinel so you can have a look at them. I'll show you in my other demo environment. And again, this will only be possibly relevant to those of you who have SAP, so I won't spend too long on it, but it is, you who do, it is pretty cool. But you can see that this is one of the tables that it creates. You can see that we've got some very nice consistent logs coming in from SAP. And alongside that, in the solution, we have analytics rules, we have workbooks, etc. So if you're using SAP, definitely worth looking at. Moving on, as I said, this is a very busy session and it's like drinking from the fire hose, but we'll go with it. And you can always watch it again. We've had the Defender connector, the new Defender connector for the Microsoft 365 for some time, but what you might not know is that we now also have, as part of this connector, a connect incidents and alerts. So what that means is it's actually a bidirectional sync from Microsoft 365 Defender alerts and incidents into Sentinel. That means that when one's updated, the other's updated. When you close an incident in one, it'll get closed in the other. So if you're using both of these products, it definitely is worth having a look at this bidirectional sync and look at turning it on, because of course that's going to reduce your workload. It means people don't need to jump between the two portals, and there's no danger of having duplicates. So that's a pretty important one that's easy to miss because it's part of, it's actually been added into the product and into an existing connector. So I always like to put in those gotchas. And then my penultimate one I wanted to talk about is our IP entity page. So UEBA has been available for some time, but we've focused on the account page and the host page. But now we've also got a UEBA page for specifically for IP entities as well. So you can see here, if you haven't looked at the URL pages, it is similar. It's timeline focused. So you can see we've got all the different alerts that have come in that are related to this IP address. Obviously, I've managed to pick one. You can see here we've got the geolocation. We've got the geolocation information as well that we've pulled when we've first seen it in the logs, where it's come from. So it allows you to really, really zoom in there into the IP entity, which is certainly going to be useful for analysts as well to be able to zoom in on that. And then the very last thing I'm going to show you is a very cool little feature, which is our matching threat, Microsoft TI threat intelligence analytics. So you can see here that if we see a match for and anything in your logs that comes from Microsoft TI, then it's actually going to, you'll actually be able to turn on a rule that will actually generate an incident automatically. So you can see here in my examples, I've got the intelligence analytics rule has detected communication to a known phishing domain. You can see there good old Microsoft with a double S.com. We can see here a syslog cron event that's initiated communication to a known phishing domain. So again, just giving you more, and I'll just click on one more. We can see another phishing domain. We've got drop IMCP communications to Bing double G. So again, this is something that you might want to investigate, or you can use this in combination with any of your other rules. But it's definitely something that's worth looking at, because again, just giving your analysts more things to work with and picking up more suspicious things in your environment. Now, that was a bit of a whirlwind tour, I know, but that's everything I've got to show you this morning. I'm going to hand over to Jeremy, and then he's going to run you through the second half of this webinar. So hopefully everyone enjoyed that, and over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Sarah. Now I'm going to share my screen. All right. Balon, can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, all is good.
Thank you. Now, so early on, Sarah has shared quite a lot of features, but that's not it. So in the second half of the session, I will cover, a little bit more features related to analytics, automations, UEBA, and also incidents collaborations. All right, first, let's talk about the enhanced entity mapping. So we have increased the entity types from 5 to 18. So you can see from the screenshots, these are some of the new entity types, such as Azure Resource, Cloud Applications, DNS. So we know that entity types is important in Azure Sentinel, especially for investigations, because you need to map the entity types in order to have entities show up in your investigation graph. And also, it's also important for Azure Sentinel to recognize the entity so that it can perform correlations internally. In order for user to define the entity types, we have multiple identifiers available. For example, if you want to map an account entity, you get the options such as you can map either the user principal name, the display name, Azure AD, user ID, and etc. Depends on what type of entity you are mapping. Some entity types allows only one identifier, but there are some entity types that allows up to 3 identifiers. So think about identifier as attributes of the entity. The more that you map, or the more that you describe the identifier, you have those informations available as the attributes of the entity, and of course, you also increase the accuracy of the entity mapping. Now, so with the new entity types, it no longer show up in the query sections when you perform the entity mapping. So this will ensure that you have a clean view in your query sections, and this will also prevent, so let's say someone accidentally modify the query, right? So that might mess up with your entity mapping. So so currently, just take note that unlike previously, where your KQL query will be updated with the extend command when you perform a mapping. So now the new entity type will not, update the query. And also, it supports multiple entity of the same kind on a single event. What does that mean is, for example, if you are monitoring events, let's say in my events, I might have the source IP and also destination IP. So I can use this IP entity to map. So one for the source IP, and I can create another entity mapping to map the destination IP. So that both will appear in your incidents, and that's one of the use case of using the same entity kind for multiple entities. Next, custom details. We know that SOC analysts, leverage incidents and alerts in terms of troubleshootings. That's why if we can, enrich the incidents, or maybe add additional informations into it, that will increase the efficiency of the SOC analyst. So custom details together with entity mapping that I mentioned earlier, and also the dynamic alert contents that I'll be talk about in the next slides. These are the part of the alert enrichment features that we announced in the last few months. So for custom details, basically you can define up to 20, we call it key value pairs, where you can map the fields based on your query results into custom details, and those informations will surface in the alerts, so that the SOC analyst will be able to consume those additional informations without going back to the raw data. Hence, this will actually increase the efficiency. Besides that, you can also use custom details to perform the grouping of your alerts. All right, so this is one of the top asks, requests from the customer. So previously, you might notice that the alert name or the incident name is pretty much hard-coded, depending on the rule name that you define. So that's actually might have a few limitations. So for example, if you want to, let's say, monitor similar operations, for example, I want to monitor user activities, but I want to be able to raise the incidents to high severity if, let's say, the user detected belongs to the VIP user or high risk user, but I want to be able to raise a low severity incidents if, let's say, it's not risky user. So in the past, you need to create individual rules, right, to cater such scenarios. And that actually increased the volumes of your the custom schedule analytics rule, right? The numbers of rules that you need to create. So for MSSP, that might be a concern, because in Azure Sentinel, we have a limit of 512 analytics rule. So although this number is pretty high, most customers will not hit that limit. But sometimes MSSP, when they manage multiple customer and have a centralized analytics rule, so by using the old analytics rule without this dynamic alert contents, they might need to create multiple schedule rules for the same kind of detections. So with this, you can actually consolidate, right, some of your monitoring logics into a single rule. And because this allows user to define the name, descriptions, tactics, and severity dynamically based on your query results. All right, so going back to the use case that I just mentioned. So for example, if I detected that a particular user is part of the VIP user, I want to be able to raise as a high severity. and it is just a normal user, I will just raise it at low severity, right? So that can be achieved with just one single rule. In terms of the incident page, so we have made improvements in searching. Besides the ability to search incidents ID, title, text, owner, and product names, we have added the following parameters. So these are part of our advanced search capabilities. So if you look at all these fields or parameters, that's basically all the parameters available for an incident, right? That means you can basically search for anything within an incident. My favorite is actually the entity fields because that allows me to, let's say, if I want to search what are the alert or incident that generated by a specific computer name, right? I can just search for that host name, and all the related incidents will show up in seconds. Now, Watchlist. So Watchlist is not new. We released that last year, but in the last 6 months, we have improved it. For example, now you can add, delete, or edit watchlist items directly from the Azure portal, the UI, without the need of redeploy or re-upload the CSV file. And besides that, watch lists are now GA for all regions. A little bit more about watch lists. Currently, we have watch list templates for UEBA. So these are the 6 templates currently available as part of the UEBA integrations. That means the watch list item that you populate, for any of these 6 watch list templates will be, integrates with UEBA. And that means that the information will surface in the entity page, in the in the UEBA table, such as the behavioral analytics table, and an investigation graph as the watchlist insight as well. So we do have the schema published for all these 6 templates. So you can either refer to our documentations, or if you go to any of the templates itself, you can download the schema, and the schema will actually mention which fields are actually mandatory, and then what are the data that you need to populate, right? So because every template will cater for different scenarios. Right, a little bit more about UEBA. We have released another table related to UEBA. So this is called identity info table. What it does is it will synchronize the user informations from your Azure Active Directory. So, for example, the user job title, group memberships, departments, locations, and many more. With all these informations, you can actually correlate those data right within your schedule rules. You can also use it for hunting or correlate it within your workbooks. One of the use cases would be, let's say, I want to find out if anyone from, let's say, from non-IT department, right? But but created Azure resources, right? For example, so with the information from identity info table, you'll be able to get the department informations, and besides that, you'll be able to get, let's say, who are the manager, right? For a user, right? Within an incident. So when analysts look at the incidents, they straight away know that, hey, this is the manager, so maybe I'll check with the manager to find out more information. Or you can even create a playbooks, right, that will, let's say, notify a manager if something happens. So there's a lot of use case that you can build based on this identity info table. Next, one of the most important features, automation rules. Basically, it allows user to manage the playbooks and also incidents handling at scale. So as you can see from the screenshots, so in the past, if you want to assign a playbooks for rules, you might need to do it one by one. But today you can actually assign playbooks to multiple analytics rule. For example, you can see that there's a from the screenshot, there's a conditions options where, let's say I want to have a playbook that I want to assign to all my rules, right? I can do that easily. Or maybe I might want to do call a playbooks when for all the instance with severity equals to high, right? So I can do that with the condition sections over here. And besides that, automation rules has provided a few built-in actions. So built-in actions means you can perform those tasks without having the need to create playbooks. So for example, you can perform tagging, you can perform incident assignment, closing incidents, right? So those are some of the built-in actions that you can use automation rules without the need to create a playbook. And besides that, you can specify the expiry of the automation rules. For example, if I know that today until, let's say, Sunday, right? So we will be performing some testing, right? And we know that there will be a lot of incidents being generated, right? So I can create automation rules that say, hey, I want to close the incidents whenever a specific, rule types that or instance type that gets triggered during this time frame. And that will suppress, right, the incidents without having those incidents being flooded in my incidents page. And besides that, you can, if let's say there's a requirements to perform certain or some automations in sequence, you can create multiple automation rules, and you can see there's an order where you can specify, the order or the sequence of those, automation rules to run. Next is SOC ML. Now we had the webinar yesterday on these topics. So I'm not gonna talk a lot about it. So basically, SOC ML is a machine learning based anomaly detections to identify unusual behavior in your environment. So this is all these rules are enabled by default, but they will not generate any incidents or alerts. But we do have plan to integrate so all this information will actually be captured in a table called anomalies, and we have planned to integrate more with our built-in features. So watch this space. But as I said, we do have a webinar that the dedicated webinar that talk about this. So I suggest you guys to watch that webinar. That the recording is already available. Now, in terms of collaborations, so some customer when they triaging an instance, so they might create a chat in Teams, right? So they might add, let's say, their team members, or maybe members from other teams like operations, for example, right, or other departments, when performing an investigation. And sometimes they might need to go navigate away, right, from Teams and go to Azure portal, Sentinel portal, to look at those informations, and they might want to put some links or upload some documentation, right, in the chat window. So you can see that you need to go back and forth, right? But with this new feature, you can actually collaborate seamlessly with your team members with this Azure Sentinel and Microsoft Teams integration. So this allows you to create a dedicated team channels per incident, and all the incidents details are available directly in the team channel. As you can see, you can access the incidents, like entity commands and all other information. So this will actually improve the increase the efficiency and effectiveness of your SOC team. All right, so as for demo, now I'll talk about the use case of my demo. So basically, and I'll use some of the new features that I mentioned earlier, right, to cater for this demo. So this is my use case. Let's say the SOC team, they would like to monitor any Azure activities, right? For example, someone created Azure resource, someone deleted Azure resource, right? So those activities performed by a list of users, right, who are about to leave the company, right? So those are basically, maybe some of the high-risk user, right, that you want to keep track. And then the requirements would be they would like to receive incidents, let's say, for resource creations and deletion, right? They want to receive incidents separately. The reason is because they want to identify or specify the severity, right? So let's say for any Azure resource creation, right? So we will want to have medium severity. And for any resource deletion, it will be a high severity, right? So I think that makes sense. And also, for any high severity incidents, the incidents will be tagged as urgent, all right? And of course, we want to be able to collaborate with the SOC member effectively. So now, so these are the requirements. Let me bring you to my Azure portal. Now, first of all, remember that the first requirement is we want to track, right, users who are about to, leave the company or maybe to be terminated, right? So remember I talked about the watchlist templates. So I'm going to show you the watchlist templates. So just go to watchlist, and you can see that these are the watchlist templates for UEBA, right? So you can consume any of these templates. So for example, for this use case, I'll be using terminated employees. So terminated employees, you can see under the descriptions, but this is for a list of user accounts that's been or about to be terminated, right? So this fulfill my use case. So you can actually create from templates and after that uploads the data. You can also look at remember I talked about schema, so you can download the schema directly from the portal, or you can also go to the documentations to read for further information. So let me show you my watchlist item. So these are the the entries that I have pre-populated. So as I mentioned earlier, not all the fields are mandatory. So you can refer to the documentation on which are the fields, which are mandatory and which are the fields which are optional. Okay, so for this use case, I'll be using the user called Ellen. All right, so this would be one of the employees that has been notified, right, that will get terminated. So this is the user that we'll use for demo. Okay. All right. So now once we have set up the watchlist item, the next thing to do is to configure the our schedule rule. Okay. Now for schedule rules, I will show you a comparison. So in my case, I have created actually 3 schedule rules. But I want to show you what user would do, right, in the past, okay, without the new features. So remember that use case is the user would like to trigger a medium severity incident, right, when there's any Azure resource creation, and also a high severity for any Azure resource deletion, right? Just remember the use case. So that's why in the past, the user will create 2 separate rules, okay? And the logic is similar, right? You just monitor Azure activity logs, right? And then for any creations, right, you just so this one will monitor the creation and you raise as medium, and for deletion you raise as high. So I will show you the details, but it's pretty simple. As you can see, this is high. So this is the sample query. So basically just monitor, right, any operation value with write and create. As you can see that this rule is actually correlating watch lists. And this is the terminated employee watch list that I just showed you earlier. So basically, it will perform the correlations, right? Only the users part of the watch list that has performed Azure resource creations will get alerted, okay? And these are the entity mapping. I'm not gonna perform any custom details or alert details because this is just to showcase as a comparison what user would do, right, in the past. Now, so and for those for the comparison, I actually labeled that the rule name with demo1 as a suffix. So this is to indicate that this will be what user will be doing in the past. Okay. Now for the new features. So now we have the new features. So let's look at demo2. So demo2 is what user can achieve, right, with the new features that I just mentioned. So you can see that I only have one rule, and the rule severity is medium. Okay, and the rule name is basically the same as what you saw earlier with the demo one, right? But I want to show you the configurations. You can see that with the help of dynamic content, right? So under alert details, so this is where we specify dynamic content, and I'll show you the query. Now, these bits are all the same, right? But but I'm catering for both resource creation and deletion in one single query, in one single rule. And besides that, you can see that I'm using the extend command to create a title fields, right? So this will actually construct my alert title. Okay, my alert title. So you can see that this title, okay, will have the operations. This will be dynamic value, right, based on the results, and this entire title will be the alert name. Okay, you can see that the format, the double curly bracket is basically the format for you to use the define fields from the query. And not only that, I even added the username, okay, the caller, right, within the title. And as you can see for severity, again, I'm using extend command. I define severity column. So, and depends on whether it is a resource creation or deletion. If it's a creations, it will be medium, otherwise high because it will be deletion, okay? And again, I map that severity column with this the severity options, okay? Basically, you can just choose the columns that you define or available as part of your query, okay? So these are all pretty standards, and and for event grouping, for this demo, I'm using trigger for each event, but you can use group all events because I basically perform all the testing within 5 minutes. So I want to show you the differences. So I want to have the alerts to trigger individually for each event. Now, the next thing I want to show you is the custom details. You can see that I have also defined custom details, right? So this will be additional information that will surface, right, in the incidents or in the alerts, basically, okay? So so I have added resource group, resource provider, right? So when the analysts look at these alerts, they will know that, okay, so this resource belongs to which resource group, okay? And then I can use the custom details for my grouping, okay? For my alert grouping, you can see that in the past, you can group based on entity, but now I can group not only entity, but also the custom details that I defined earlier. Okay, so by doing this, that means the alerts with the same name, right, and the same color basically, and the same operations. For example, the deletion will be, in one incident, and the creation will be in one incident. Okay, all right. So, and besides that, remember there's a need to perform tagging. So obviously that will be part of the automations. And let me show you that. So this will be this one. So you can see that I'm using the built-in actions. So these are all the built-in actions. So basically I'll just tag it as urgent. Okay, so, and I can pick the rules that, that need to, that I can specify which rule I want to tag that, but for demo purposes, I just choose everything. All right, so those are the preparations. And then obviously I have done some, I have simulated a couple of, Azure creation and deletion with the account that I just mentioned, right? The user account, Ellen. So now let's look at the incidents, okay? So, so first of all, let's look at how it looks like. Remember demo one, right? So this is how it would look like without the new features. So basically you get, so I performed 3 activities, 2 resource creation and 1 deletion, okay? You can see that in the past, this is how it's gonna look like. This is pretty standard. I'm not gonna go through a lot. So you will see the entities, and then you will see the entities over here. You won't get any additional information, right? Unless you go to the raw events. But let's look at the new one, right? Demo 2. Okay. Now you can see that for demo 2, first of all, remember that this particular rule, right? This is the name of the rule. But look at the alert name that it's got triggered. Okay. So, and then not only that, remember that the rule was created as medium severity, but because I was able to assign the severity dynamically, you can see that it even trigger, right, the incidents with high severity, because this is for deletion. And let me show you how it looks like. So if I go to the timeline, you can see that I have 2 alerts. Okay, so if I click on this one, if you still remember, I have my custom details. So from here, I know that, all right, so this is the resource provider, this is the resource group. And then similarly, if I click on another one, this is the resource provider, this is the resource group, and both activity were performed by the same user, right? That's why they're being grouped together. Remember the grouping that I showed you earlier, and also the the incident title. There is a username, right? That got populated as well. Okay, so one last thing. Remember that collaborations, right? So during the investigation, what I can do is, let's say, hey, this is the high severity, and I want to create a team channel, right, to perform investigation. So I can click actions and create teams. So what I can do is, you can see that by default, it will populate the incident's title. Okay, I can change that, but I'll just leave it. And let's say I want to select my stocks team to perform collaboration. So this is like my war room, right, where I will discuss about this incident, and I'll create that. Oh, let me just try that again. Let me refresh that. I think I have my my session. Been doing that for quite some time. So let's do it again. So for this one, and then create teams, and I'll choose my socks team. I'll add that, and then I'll create teams. Oh, looks like it doesn't like it. I'll do it one more time. Otherwise, I'll just show you what I had earlier. Okay, so I'll just show you what I've got created earlier. So this is the one. So basically, you can see that you can start a conversations, but you get this incident page where you will see the informations of the incident. All right, so you can see that all the information regarding the incidents will be available here. And then you can, perform, you can, start your conversation with other teams and, upload the information or files over here. And also, before I forget, you can see that there's this advanced search. So if I want to search just for the user, so I'm gonna pick entity. So let's say I would like to search for Ellen, okay? So it will only show me all the incidents related to this particular entity. And that concludes my demo. I'll go back to slides. All right, so we do have, so if you want to find out more information, so we have compiled a list of documentations for you to have some further reading. And with that, I'll hand it back to Valon.
Well, thank you so much, Jeremy and Sarah, for being our guest today and for sharing this excellent presentation. And we are at the top of the hour, so although we have answered a bulk of the questions that were sent to us here in the chat, however, if there's something that we missed or you have additional questions, please visit and submit those at our Azure Sentinel forum at aka.ms/Azure Sentinel community. Sorry. And just before closing, I would like to remind our listeners also that we have published our fall webinar edition. The list of webinars is growing, and we'll be publishing additional webinars in the days ahead. And please, for registration, please visit us at aka.ms/security webinars. And to ensure that you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements, visit our landing page at aka.ms/security community, and in there you'll see there's a sign up for our email list. Okay, so I want to thank all of you for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars. So we hope to see you next time. Goodbye.